Well, hello everybody. We're getting close to the end here as far as our summer class goes. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the magazine project, which is your last, kind of the final project that we'll be doing for the class. You have a couple options with this one. I wanted to give you a choice between either creating an 8-page magazine, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this slideshow, or if you are interested and it feels like it's more applicable to you, I'm going to talk separately about doing an 8-page yearbook sort of theme package thing that you can put together as an option as well. Or you could do both. If you're an overachiever and you want to get through both, you certainly could do that as well. But I wanted to introduce the yearbook option too, just as a choice for those of you who are either currently advising yearbook or hoping/planning to advise yearbook. I thought that that would be a good option for you as well. Today, though, we're going to talk specifically about the final magazine project. So I'm going to kind of go through the components of this project and then give you some options as far as some examples of how you might want to put together some of those pages. And it's a little all over the place. I kind of go back and forth in terms of I wanted to show you sort of the whole project all the way through, like wanting a couple examples of it all the way through. But also wanted to show you multiple examples of each of the pages that you're doing. And so I ended up kind of going back and forth. So you'll see how this is a little bit all over the place as far as that goes. This is basically what you're going to be putting together. You'll need 8 pages. The first page obviously will be a cover. Page 2 will include some sort of table of contents. Page 3 will be a series of briefs or alternative story form type things that you'll be putting together. And then you'll have 2 double-page spreads. So 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 will be double-page spreads. One of the 2 of them, I'd like to have it connect to the cover package. So whatever your cover is, I'd like you to sort of advance that same idea with one of the 2-page spreads. And the other one can just be a spread about something else altogether. And then I'd like you to do an 8th page, which would be some sort of a profile page or sort of an individual topic type thing. And we'll talk through about trying to have some consistency in terms of your design throughout the course of this. You want all 8 pages. They don't have to look exactly the same, but you want to use some of the same elements so you get a sense that these are from the same magazine. So I'll show you some good examples of that. And some examples from both the professional world and from a couple that my students have done that are, I think, done really well, and some that probably could use a little more of that consistency. So we'll take a look at those as well. So you're going to create that in InDesign and then convert it to a PDF and submit that PDF as your final project. This will be the last day of class. So you'll have, from the time I introduce it, you'll have not quite 2 full weeks. And of course, this is also going to overlap a little bit with the design project number 4, which you are also in the process of finishing up. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples. First, we'll go through some covers. You have some really good examples of artwork here, just in some various covers that have been done. This is a great one of all the shoes of the runners in the Boston Marathon, tied into some charity work that was done with regard to the Boston Marathon bombing a few years ago. But just a great piece of artwork here. Pretty minimal text, right? You're going to see not a ton of text on these covers. And with magazines, unlike what you might be doing with newspaper, generally speaking, you're not going to be starting any sort of story on the cover. It's just going to either be teasers for things that are inside or just a very straightforward sort of minimal text technique like you see here. Here's one from New York Times Magazine. Again, really, really nice artwork that goes with this. Very subtle in terms of the teasers down the right-hand side. Nice alignment there. Good use of contrast with the text. You can see which part of the text you really are supposed to be drawn to first, that lead story that goes with the artwork. And just a nice package with the photo and using the background of the photo to incorporate some of the text. Pretty famous cover from the New Yorker a few years ago. after the Supreme Court decision on gay marriage. You saw this cover come out in the New Yorker, a magazine obviously known for their cartoon, editorial cartoon work, and obviously that's included on the cover as well. They've got some great ones recently about the presidential transition and interesting and potentially controversial covers about Donald Trump, but always pretty provocative. But again, nothing really in terms of text here, other than just the flag, the nameplate for the magazine. And then you contrast that with this one, which is got a lot going on, a really fun cover, really cool artwork. You can see the teasers down the two sides, but lots of really interesting, cool, fun artwork that's being done here. Here's another one from New York Magazine. I really love how they've, again, incorporated the artwork into the cover itself. So they're able to put the teasers and the stories that are inside just lay them right over the tongue on the cover here. So really nice work. Okay, here's one that my students did. This was our last magazine this past year. They did a really, really powerful, in-depth center spread piece on the sort of connections or contradictions between homosexuality and religion, and kind of tried to explore that in I think a pretty objective and meaningful way. And they talked a lot about how to kind of put the artwork together for that. So the lead package, they have one of the sources that they used in the story. And then they really wanted to create this sort of rainbow effect with also tying that braid into being sort of almost a box or a cage that this guy is appearing to be in. So the goal was to then use some of that artwork within the package. So this is what the cover looks like. And then the first page on the inside of the segment, they wanted kind of this Bible look. So this is the intro to the story. I would like to see, I think, some sort of a more tie-in to what they did with the cover artwork. But I think it's a nice look in terms of how that worked together. And then when you get into the actual package, then you get more of those braids that were being used on the cover. So you definitely get that sense of understanding that this story really goes with that cover package. And then the story continues here with this artwork. These are all on Issue as well, so if you search C Magazine on Issue, you'll be able to find these stories in case you're interested in reading them. And then this was the final spread of that package. So just so you can kind of see how some of the interior pieces go along with that cover package. All right, then table of contents. You have an example here. I think this is really well done. This is the same magazine. Typically what my students, you'll see a couple of other examples of this. They try to incorporate some of the same design techniques and some of the same thematic packages that they're using in their cover package on the table of contents. This one did not. We had two different students designing these. One of my sort of up-and-coming designers for next year, because this was the last magazine of the year, she designed this and kind of did a redesign on our table of contents, and I really liked the look of it, but it didn't necessarily connect to that cover package. Here's just the spread. They do an editor's letter in our masthead on the left-hand side of that package. You're also going to need to use briefs. And we don't necessarily do a lot of briefs with CMAG in terms of having multiple packages on the same page. But this is one of our pages that you could, I think, constitute as one of the briefs. So covering different events and concerts that are coming up in that particular time frame that the issue comes out. You might use that as far as briefs go. Here's another example, after school snacks. And this is a full page package, but again, you could see how something like this would work into having part of a brief. And I'll show you some other professional examples of briefs coming up. You also will need to have a couple of 2-page spreads, okay, 2 of those. So pages 4 through 7 will be 2 double-page spreads. And here's a few other examples that we use from the same magazine. So this is one on tattoo artists, and you can see how the 2 sides of the page incorporate pretty well with a nice dominant image there. Here's another one on art, Minnesota Street Project, and you can see how the story's chunked. You've got some pieces of artwork at the top, and then kind of in a weird way, we don't do this very often, but they decided to do the headline running along the bottom of the page. And then you'll want some sort of a personality profile. So this would be, yours is just going to be a page, but it'll be a page specifically about one particular person. So really love this artwork here. I love the fact that they took this girl's dress and incorporated it into this drop cap where the story starts, so you have that combination between the two. They utilize that pink color in a couple of places. Really nice package, but you can do some really cool things with personality profile pages, and that's something that I think students are really into, so consider that for your publication. Okay, so let's go through it again so you can kind of see, again, the package and how those pieces kind of work together. So here are the another example of the 8 that you're going to be going through. So another cover package that we did in our 3rd issue last year on graffiti and whether graffiti is should be considered an art form or not. So they did a cover package on that. This one, when they got to the table of contents, they did a nicer job of incorporating some of those, some of the graffiti ideas into that table of contents. And then here's the inside in-depth package. This is the beginning of that Spray It, Don't Say It package. So you've got the story and some really cool artwork. Here's the next page of that. And again, these are pieces you should include one spread that ties into your cover package, but you do not have to do more than one spread on that. Another example of briefs that might be one mod that's done for that. So you've got different books that students might be interested in reading. And then here's another couple examples of briefs from professional magazines. So this is from O Magazine, and you can see here where these briefs are multiple mods gridded out on the same package. Lots of different alternative story form pieces that are happening together. So you want to think about how you can utilize some of these ASFs to incorporate them into your design of your themed magazine. Right? So lots of different cool things going on. Here's another one from a magazine that I don't think exists any longer, from Best Life. They do the hit list, and you can see how that's pretty nicely organized. Lots of things going on. It gets a little confusing, I think, maybe, but you've got pretty straightforward vertical designs here. Even though there's a lot of artwork, you're able to sort of keep that in line. So these are briefs. Okay, then a couple other double-page spreads. These are from that same graffiti magazine that we did. Hidden Treasures of San Francisco, and a food story. This one's on different uses for peppermint. This was getting close to the Christmas season, so I think that made sense. Here's another one they did in the same magazine on ethical fashion. So that second double-page spread does not necessarily have to incorporate into whatever your cover story is. It can be a kind of a separate piece as you work through that. And think about this magazine that I'm showing you is just kind of a straightforward arts and culture magazine. It covers music and different student artwork and theater and movies and things like that, fashion, obviously. But you want to come up with a theme for your magazine. So yours could be about politics, or it could be about sports, or it could be about food, or it could be a magazine about photography. Come up with a sort of a specific purpose for this magazine. You're creating it. It's your own magazine. You call it whatever you want to call it. And then those spreads obviously will kind of go along with whatever that theme is that you choose. One more example of a package all the way through. This was our second edition this year. Was a story on the deaf culture and students who are students and parents and community members who have differing opinions on their place within the deaf culture. And they did some really interesting research on that. We have a student at our school, multiple students, but this particular one who uses cochlear implants, and they wanted to kind of get at that idea of what she thought about deaf culture and her place in it. And there's some really interesting sort of philosophical and psychological conundrums as far as people within the deaf culture and whether or not they should use some sort of implant to allow them to hear better. There are many members of the deaf culture who believe that they shouldn't, and so we kind of cover both sides of that in terms of these students' place within that culture. So this was the cover package, and then this was the table of contents for that same magazine. Again, I think this one probably could have done a better job of connecting to what was happening with the cover. So thematically it connects, but I'm not sure visually it necessarily connects in the same way. Here's the interior of that. And these also could serve, I think, as examples of the personality profile that you're doing. So here's the story on the same girl who's on the cover. And again, you could also sort of imagine this as your personality profile spread. Here's the second spread of that. And so here you can see how those lines, those colored lines that kind of were introduced with the cochlear implant on the cover are used again here with this package, but pretty minimal beyond that. And here's the third spread of that. Really kind of, I like the look of this, that black and white with the thin colored lines. All right, another couple examples of personality profiles, because that's the piece that I haven't talked about too much yet. Here's some other professional examples. So this is from National Geographic. This would be a good example. There's 3 questions that they do where they have a particular person and they just basically ask them 3 questions and get their answers. And it's not a traditional story. It's more of an alternative story form, but certainly works as a profile. And you'll see a couple of other examples like that as well. Here's one from the New York Times Magazine, a profile on Whitney Cummings. And again, you have just sort of that question and answer kind of format. Really, really cool photo cutout of her in the middle. I just really like this package and how this works. Reader's Digest has some really cool designs. It's a surprisingly interesting place to go for good design inspiration. And here's another personality profile. Love how he's appearing in the design to look into the headline. So you have that nice package that's created, nice use of color on here. Another good example of a personality profile. And here's one more from Fast Company. Again, you see how this is a little bit of a trend now. This is called My Way, and again, it's just sort of almost a verbatim where they're interviewing one of the people, their subject here, and basically allowing them to tell the story in their own words. You see how all 3 of these these last examples have been utilizing cutout pictures, and I think that that's something that you can think about for your personality profile page as well. Okay, so you've gotten examples of each of the 8 pages that you'll be doing. Let's take a look at the objectives for this project. You want to have an art-driven cover. You're going to create an 8-page document. We'll talk about the linking tool. I'll introduce that separately. You've used master pages before, so we'll be able to number those pages so that you can work through that. And there are, remember, there's tutorials on these things. If you go back to earlier weeks in the semester, you'll be able to find tutorials on some of these things. Obviously, incorporate the skills that you've used. Really think about your white space and how you're using that. And create a grid for this. So make sure with your pages you have some sort of a grid that you've created and you want to stick to it. And finally, here's the elements, just kind of a recap here to make sure we're all on the same page. You are creating a magazine on a specific topic and then creating a flag for that particular magazine. You're going to incorporate art and photos, cut lines for all your photos, headlines and decks for all of the stories that are included. These are the pages that you should have. A cover where you are not actually starting any of the stories. You kind of have teasers. This is kind of up to you, but you want the cover to introduce the look of the magazines that you're then going to incorporate throughout the course of it. You'll have a table of contents page that, again, kind of goes thematically, connects a little bit to what you're doing with the package. a page of briefs, and I think that those two can probably fit together. So if you're looking at those two pages kind of connecting the table of contents and the briefs as a spread. And then two double-page spreads. One of them should connect to your cover story and should incorporate some sort of alternative story form. And then a separate two-page spread on a different topic that would be one of the spreads in the magazine. And I would also consider doing some sort of ASF on that as well. And then that last additional page, page 8, which we talked about being a personality profile page. You certainly should use Tim Harrower's book for examples. Go back to all of the materials and maybe look at the slideshows that we've created over the course of the semester. This is your opportunity to kind of take all of that material and incorporate it into one final project for the semester. As always, if you have any questions, shoot me an email or ask on Facebook, and have fun with this. Good luck, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.